I heard this joke the other day. How do you make God laugh? Telling me plans. I thought it was quite interesting. I've never heard of that joke before. So I thought I'd just let you know about my path, journey to Christianity. I was born in 1971. I didn't really have much to do with God. I knew that there was a God. Didn't know why. I was told to believe in God. I never really had. I had no exposure. My mum was a Catholic, but I knew more about Elvis Presley than I did to know about God. In 1980, from 77 to 79, I went to a public school, and in 1980 I went to a private school called St. Joseph's down in Bunbury in Western Australia. That school was the first time I got exposed to God. And this is a true story. I think it was the second day at school. Someone walked into our class and said, "We've all got maths." So I went to my bags, got my maths books out, walked over, followed everyone. There's nothing to do about maths. It was actually maths. I didn't even know what the word meant. So we actually went to the chapel at the school and actually did our very first mass. Had no idea what was happening. Had no idea about communion. It wasn't until later on that I was confirmed back in about 83. So my exposure to God, like I said, had nothing to talk about. I went to a high school. I went to a Catholic high school. Went to mass. Never believed it. I knew that there was a God, but I'm always one of these people who questions things. I just wasn't going to be believing something because I got told I had to believe. So I used to go, well, if God made me, who made God? Those questions all the time, and no one could give me an answer, and they just said, oh, it's just faith, you just need to believe. That wasn't good enough for me, and I have to be honest, at the Catholic schools back in the 80s, we had brothers and we had nuns or sisters, and they were terrible human beings. There was one that was all right. No, there was a brother David, who was my principal. He was a really nice guy. But the rest of them, awful. I don't know how you could be so cruel to kids. And that left a bitter taste in my mouth, really bitter taste in my mouth. 1987, end of the year, my mum was called into school. The vice principal says, your son will no longer be coming back to our school, not invited. So I actually left that school, went to a public school. And that was in 88. I had to go to another school. So still no exposure. So 87 would have been the last time I went to mass. And that was just because of school. I never went on the weekends. Never really believed it. So for the rest of my life, I realised I'm not really sure if there's a God. So I would actually say I was an atheist. Not Ricky Gervais sort of atheist. I never used to tell everyone, but I just said, look, there's nothing there. I think when you're dead, you're just worm food. There's no real, it wasn't part of my agenda. It wasn't part of my game. It wasn't part of anything. I wasn't a believer. 2023, I'll just turn around because there's a fair bit of wind there, so I don't know if that was exposed. In 2023, we left Australia for a 3.5-month holiday in Europe and staying most of the time in England. So I'm half English, half Australian, even though I was born in Australia. So I've got more family in England than I have in Australia. My cousin got quite ill and he actually died. And he was the funniest guy I've ever met. And so when I was over there, I finished up going to his funeral. At the same time, I had 2 horses racing. The race was at 12:29 or 12:27, and the funeral was starting at 12:30. I said to my wife, I said, what shall we do? I said, it's a tricky one. I don't want to be disrespectful. So I said, no, I'll turn off the phone. I had 2 runners in the big race. It was a Group 1 race. And I turned off my phone. And I listened to I was actually in the chapel when we had the cat come. Last time this cat came and bit me, so hopefully it doesn't. I'm glad it's not a lion. So I listened to the sermon, and they were talking about my cousin who actually liked horse racing. I never knew, because I knew there's a few people in our family who liked horse racing, but I actually didn't know that Dean liked horse racing, and he would spend time having a bet. And I said, oh, maybe I should have listened to the race, but I didn't actually. I thought that was disrespectful, so I didn't listen to the race. The service finished, went outside, and I had a look at some flowers just on the ground, and it was to Dean, my cousin, who just passed away. So I said, oh, I wonder if it's disrespectful I turn the phone on. Well, I turned the phone on, so I've got two horses in the main race. One was about 8 to 10 to 1, the other one was about 20 to 1, so they were two roughies. I turned the phone on, and even though I was in England, I still got a lot of messages. The phone just went go ding, 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 ding. I've got numerous messages. One of the messages says, oh, congratulations, Brownie, well done. And I said to Tara and my wife, I go, well, I know we won something, I know we won, but I don't know which horse it is. So I went, opened up the harness website, and we actually come first and second. So both of our horses had come first and second in a Group 1. Now, I've won a Group 1 before, but I've never had a Quinella. So to have a Quinella in the big race was just unbelievable. I knew my cousin was looking over me. So that was my first exposure. And I have to be honest, I cried like a baby. When that happened, we both won, and I just heard it from Dean. I knew Dean, my cousin, was looking over me. Was I still a believer in God? Most probably not. But I knew there must be some afterlife. So what's the probability and possibility of having two horses? I think the Quinella paid about 270 to 1. So that's how unlikely it was. So I found it really, really weird that we won. My cousin was getting buried at the same time as the Group 1 was on. I put my phone off, and we talked about him liking horse racing. So I knew there must be something behind the scenes, or something above. So about 2 weeks later, we're over in Germany, and our horses won the big one as well. They come first and second in the same order as they did when I was over in England. So anyway, it was just unbelievable how things worked out. We're just very lucky. Then we come back to Australia, and then I went through a stint where everything was going wrong. And I mean, everything was going wrong. I had my good horses breaking down, horses were getting flat tires, or whatever happened, it was going wrong. And if I had a bet, if I had a Quinella bet, they would come first and third. If I had a place bet, they'll come fourth. If I'd be stuck at lights or whatever, everything was going wrong. And I was just going, what the hell is going on? I said to my wife, I said, I've been unlucky in a few bets, but I don't know what's actually going wrong here. I says, it's like I've run over a Chinaman holding a black cat while hitting a mirror. It was the weirdest time of my life. And I was driving down a road called Oran Road in Perth, and I remember just thinking about it. And I was just saying, I don't know what to do here, because everything was the worst bit of luck I've ever had in my life. And I just remember my vision started to like screw around, and it was like I was going into some sort of trance, and I was getting told that it'll be all right if you come to my side. And it was the devil talking. And you can call me a liar as much as you want, but he wasn't talking as in sitting right next to me, but my thoughts were, this was going to be okay, everything will change as long as you sell your soul to me. It's weird, I'm walking right past a church right now while I'm saying this. So I knew straight away I had a choice, and my decision straight away was, I'm not going to hell, I am not going to the dark side. So I knew if there was darkness, there had to be light. And from that day on, I was a Christian. I wasn't going to church every time, I wasn't reading the Bible, but I knew that there was a God. I would challenge him all the time if I would have a shower when I was by myself, or could just show us some signs. And I was going to just be there, give me something, but I knew there had to be a God. And once again, I was having some luck and some bad luck. But then, as I've told you in my first video, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I said to God, I said, if you look after me, I said, I'll be forever grateful and I'll be forever kind. And I think I realised I like to have a joke and like to be funny, and a lot of people think I am funny, I'm actually funny to look at, but actually quite funny. But I realised I was using that to get those jokes was to actually take the mickey out of people and make them feel terrible. So throughout my time I've always had best friends, but I would always go a bit too far and make them feel miserable for the expense of a joke. And I realised that would make me feel good and people would laugh, but then I go, that's not fair and that's not actually nice behaviour and you're not being kind. And I keep saying, like I usually say at the end of my videos, is if you can't be anything, at least be kind. So I've actually changed my ways and actually tried to go, you know what, I want to be a kind person. Try and do at least one kind gesture per day. My younger brother, he always goes through each day trying to be kind, and I'm trying to be like that as well. And I realise that is a better way to be than actually to be a person who finds funny, but do they really want to be friendly with that person? Because at the end of the day they might be the butt of a joke. So my Christian faith has actually kept me guided, and I think that's the best way of saying it. So being a Christian is like having guardrails to the side of me. Sometimes when you might want to throw in a couple of lies to actually make the story sound a bit better, and then on the right hand side you look at your guidelines and go, no, lying is a sin. So I make sure not to lie, even if the story sounds better, or even if I don't, like if someone gives me a compliment and it wasn't deserved because I was actually from someone else, I actually, instead of just taking that compliment, I'll actually correct them and say, no, this is because such and such. Like if I told a joke and they said, oh, did you make up that joke? And I don't know, no, it was such and such who actually made up that joke. So it keeps me guided. It keeps me guided to be a better human being instead of just being self-centered and miserable. Just getting angry is not how the person I want to be. When you hear what Jesus was actually like, I think I read once or heard once that he was actually angry once, but that was against tax collectors. And if I could be 1/10 of a noble, nice person as Jesus was, I'll be a happy man. And I'm not doing this so I can go to heaven. I'm doing this because I want to be a decent person. I want to actually be liked for my kindness and not just be liked because I'm funny or say terrible jokes at people. It has been hard. It's very hard giving compliments to people, but the more you do it, actually the easier it gets. I'm just going to sit on the steps of the church so I don't run out of breath. So the being kindness is one of my guardrails. Well, the other day, I hadn't been to church since the 80s. I think 1987 was when I left St. Joseph's. I hadn't been to church. My wife's been going to church, so she's always been a Christian, but not a practicing Christian. And about the last 12 to 18 months, she's actually been going to church every Sunday. And she's been asking me, and I keep saying, I don't need to go to church. I don't need to go to church because I can speak to God whenever I want. I went to church on Good Friday because I promised her that I'll go on Good Friday. And when we got out of church, she said to me, so what do you think? And I said, it brought me peace. And she goes, yeah, it's peaceful, isn't it? I said, no, it brought me peace. I didn't feel weird being in there. I actually felt at ease. And in church, if I have to be honest, my mind does wander. And I think sometimes that is the devil actually trying to get you away from that place. And you'd be looking at things and challenging things. And one of the things was in there, and because I just had the prostatectomy just over a month ago, I get still a really sore stomach, and I can't sit in places for too long, and I have to keep moving, and I have to lay down for 2 hours. And the sermon was on, and I put my hand on my stomach, And I said, Jesus, if you're real, because sometimes I go, was Jesus just a really good man, or was Jesus actually the Son of God? And I said, Jesus, if you're real, show me a sign. And so I put my hand on my stomach, and I said, if you're real, show me pain. And as soon as I put my hand on my stomach, that part of the service was told to stand up, so everyone had to stand up. Now, when I got told that I had prostate cancer, I was told to get fit. So I borrowed a weighted jacket, which is 10 kilos, and when I'd go for a run, I'd go for a walk for the first day with a weighted jacket on, which is 10 kilos. It was quite heavy, and then the next day I actually went for a run, for the first run I've been since 2013, I think it was. And I finished up pulling up really well, but the next day I had a really sore knee, and since December I've had this really sore knee. Even though my son's learning to be a physio, he doesn't really know what it is, and I have to go and get it checked. But it doesn't hurt all the time as long as I don't do any exercise. So I put my hand on my stomach, and I said, God, show me a sign. And then everyone in the congregation stood up, and I stood up, and my knee hurt like all hell. And I said, oh God, Jesus, you got me, beauty, well done. And that was my confirmation, because I didn't know we were going to stand up. There was no plan. It was just that was part of the service. And for me to stand up, I was waiting for something in my stomach, and for it to go straight to my knee, that was a sign to me. Maybe I'm looking for something, but it was too coincidental. So that's my journey back into Christianity. And we went again on Sunday, back to church on Easter Sunday. And I've been asking questions, why are we calling it Easter, and why don't we call it Resurrection Day? And I've been asking questions about, why because it's Easter Monday today, well, why we call it Easter Monday. So I'm actually asking more questions, because I listen to an app every morning at 10:50, and that actually listens to a service or some sermons or psalms for about 3 or 4 minutes. I listen to that. So that's my journey back to Christianity. I'm not going to do a fun fact. I just do them every day, and I don't want to be doing it just about Christianity. I wanted to do it because I don't want to just do these videos so I can get enough subscribers to make money. That's not my journey. It's actually just showing. I don't want to have a path, because I keep telling people, I said, money is the root of all evil, and we're seeing it right now when it comes to different countries around the world. I don't think anyone in America has gone, you know what, I think Iran's a bad place, so we need to bomb it, or are we looking at it for oil, or are we looking for power? I'm not here to judge what people's decisions are. I'm not really quite sure, but I do think money is the root of all evil. So I don't want this YouTube journey to be about me making money. So if it's, I'll talk about Christianity a fair bit in my path, but I'm going to actually talk about what's actually on my mind and what I actually want to share with others. At 54 years of age, I don't get embarrassed anymore. I don't think many people get embarrassed as they get older, as you can see how people, what clothes they wear and how they look. They're looking about being comfortable. But once again, if you do like what I'm saying, I'd love for you to subscribe and like the channel. But I'm not going to be just talking about Christianity. I'm just going to talk about everything. Christianity is a big part of me, and my faith in God is a big part of me every day. I thank God every day that I was lucky to get checked for my prostate cancer, and I was lucky that everything went smoothly. I do have to go and get my bloods done again in a couple of weeks, so there's going to be that anxiety there. But like the start of this video, I was talking about, what's my plans. I've got no idea what my plans are. My plans are just being a good person and see where God takes me. If He makes me live to 115, or if He takes me tomorrow where the bus hits me, I've got no say in it. Well, take care, like I said. If you can't be anything, be kind. Until next week, bye.